Thank you for coming on to speak here. I know you can't make it tomorrow afternoon, lunchtime, but you've been absolutely amazing in your courage, in a way, to speak about the monarchy and what's happening. But the thing that I saw that you've written about first that alerted me to wanting you to speak was about Liz Truss dropping her energy plan on, when was it, Wednesday or Tuesday?
Thursday.
And then obviously the Queen dying on Thursday, and then we've got 10 days of mourning, and then we've got the party conferences. Yeah, and you said the system is just not efficient at all. Do you know, to start with, do you actually know enough about Liz Truss's plan to make any kind of judgment on it?
Well, we know bits of it. So we know that there will be an energy cap, which is effectively around £2,500 per household. Remember, it isn't a fix actually on the amount per household, it's the amount of the price per unit the household consumes. So some households might pay less than £2,500. Those who use lots of electricity, let's talk about Rishi Sunak and his heated indoor swimming pool, will be using a lot more and clearly paying more as a result. But the cap will be on the price. On average, we'll be paying £2,500. And let's put that in context. Although we'll all be getting a 400 quid discount because we're all going to get 400 quid given back to us under the Rishi Sunak plan from June or July. And we know that households on universal credit are going to get another £650 back. And some pensioners and disabled people will get maybe another £300 or so on top of that. That still means that most households, even those who are getting the maximum level of support, will be paying more this coming winter for power than they did last year. And benefits are only going up by 3%, we gather, which has been announced during the period when the Queen's mourning has been in place. So Parliament has had no chance to exercise scrutiny. Wow. So what's going on is that there is an effective price rise. We don't know whether those benefits, those discounts effectively will continue next winter, but we know that this price cap is now in place until October 2024, the month when I would now pretty much guarantee you there will be an election. Because, of course, there's got to be an election sometime in late 2024 at the latest. So we've got a 2-year price cap. It will provide a substantially bigger benefit to better off households than it provides to those households who are worse off, because those households who are better off can simply afford to pay more and they consume more electricity, but they're being given a discount just as much as those households on lower incomes. So that is deeply inefficient, unfair, misallocation of public resources, call it what you like. A cock-up? No, it's a plan, because it's deliberate. She wants to favour richer households more because that's where her vested interests lie. So this is a deeply unfair package. That's the first thing we need to know about it. The second thing we need to know about it is that she promises help to business. We have not the faintest idea what she means about help to business, nor do we know what she means about help for public services or charities. And that is massively worrying. Why? Because businesses pay more on average for electricity than households do. There is no cap for businesses at all, and businesses are under massive threat, particularly in hospitality and leisure and some aspects of retail where there's a high degree of discretionary spend, and a lot of people are employed in those areas. We face the risk of substantial numbers of businesses failing, and as a consequence there being significant numbers of people unemployed, and that will have a domino effect right through the economy, because once people fear they're going to lose their job, they stop spending, so they literally self-fulfill the prophecy that there will be no money in the economy. And then we must look at public services. There are still school governors, hospital trusts. We shouldn't have hospital trusts, of course, we should have a proper NHS, but all these people are looking at their bills and saying, well, we can't balance our budget for the next year, so are we going to close down the school for 2 days a week? Are we going to close down the cancer wards, or are we going to close down some other form of service? Are we going to be able to provide essential services for people with mental health issues in the coming year, which are going to increase because of the stress people are suffering. We have no idea how that level of support is going to be supplied to those essential public services, and just to keep the general public level of service running, because I reckon it could cost 80 billion to keep the public services running and provide people working for them with a decent pay rise, which they deserve. Why shouldn't they get one? And finally, we've got the issue of charities. So many people are going to be dependent upon food banks, upon heat banks, as they're now being called, and on people like debt management services, all of which are mainly run by charities now because the government won't fund them, and they don't know how they can survive either. So all we know is we have an incredibly unfair system, which is going to reduce the costs for the wealthiest households the most, do little to change the energy poverty situation in the UK, do nothing to tackle inflation in food prices and other types of service that poorer income households or lower income households are suffering, where their real cost of inflation is higher than those of high income households. And we have no idea how business is going to be supported. So we're going to get a recession. On top of which, let's be clear, on top of which, whilst Liz Truss says this will take 5% out of the inflation rate, I don't believe that. I can't see how it can, but it will take a little bit out. We still have the Bank of England saying this is effectively a stimulus for the economy. The economy is apparently overheated. What sort of world do the governors of the Bank of England and his cohort live in where they think the economy is overheated? I don't know. But they claim it is, and therefore they've got to increase interest rates. Now, interest rates have an immediate impact upon people's well-being. Two types. One, if you are in rented accommodation, by and large, private rents follow interest rates. If interest rates go up, so do private rents. If you have a mortgage and you come off your fixed rate mortgage, and in the next year about half the people on fixed rate mortgages will come off their deal and look for a new one, and will discover that the interest rate that they'll have to pay is vastly higher than what they had before. How much more a month? Well, I estimate for the average mortgage, which in the UK is £239,000, quite extraordinarily, is £239,000. The extra cost could be £600 a month, which is £7,000 a year, which is vastly bigger than the increase in energy costs, and is going to push people into homelessness and trigger every other form of crisis that you can think of, from, let's be blunt, a banking crisis. But I mean, let's just look at that. Well, let's just deal with the personal situation alone. Homelessness is, the most devastating thing that can hit any family. It destroys relationships. It undermines children's well-being, harms them for the rest of their lives. And that's the sort of risk we're facing. And the government is apparently quite happy about that. And the Bank of England says there's no risk from this. They are talking nonsense. There was a speech last week, literally from one of the governors or the members of the Monetary Policy Committee, talking absolute nonsense, saying there's no risk. We are in the biggest financial mess that any government has faced. Well, not only in my lifetime, but well before it, and I'm 64. So I can well outthink Liz Truss on this. And I've been watching economic affairs since the early 1970s, because I was a bit of an economics geek even when I was at school. And this is just a meltdown on a scale we can't really imagine. At the moment, we have no indication as to how that's going to be dealt with, but by Kwasi Kwarteng telling us that sometime in the next week, because Parliament is going to sit from Tuesday to Friday next week, we think, because the official period of mourning is over on Monday night, and the Liberal Democrats have cancelled their conference, so they think Parliament will sit for those few days. Sometime next week, he's going to announce what he calls a fiscal event, not a full budget, just an opportunity to announce tax cuts. Cuts to corporation tax for large companies, going to save them 17 odd billion a year. Cuts to national insurance, supposedly 13 billion a year, which we were told was essential to maintain the services of the NHS, which presumably are going to be cut as a consequence. And all of that to apparently stimulate growth, when I can promise you I've read vast amounts of academic literature on this stuff. That's why I get to be called a professor, which says there is no evidence at all that cutting taxes has ever created economic growth, investment, or anything else. She's relying upon the work of a chap called Arthur Laffer, who advised Ronald Reagan. I've met Arthur Laffer. I've had dinner with him. I've had breakfast with him, and I've debated with him in public. And in front of the American Chamber of Commerce in Europe, the weirdest audience I've ever had, he and I debated, and I won the debate by 2-1. They were convinced by my arguments, not his. That shows how convincing he is, even to the right wing. And this is crazy. This guy's, frankly, off this planet with regard to fantasy economics. And Liz Truss is right there, up there with him. Sorry for the diatribe, but I've just given you a short bit.
No, you sound so pissed off
I am. I'm bloody angry.
I mean, you've been sort of talking about this stuff for months, and you've kind of warned every time, at every turn, this is the wrong thing, and then the time comes when something really urgently has to be done, and then they say, no, we're going to cancel everything for 10 days. And then, I mean, I was just thinking, when they come back, going to have the Prime Minister's question time, which will just be the same pantomime it's always been. It won't be an honest discussion, will it? It will be, no, we're the party that cuts taxes, blah, 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 whatever it is. So in a way, and also what you've been writing in your tweets is an expose of how our political system does not efficiently operate under the stress that it is under. It cannot seem to function. You talk about that quite a lot in your tweets, about functioning democracy in some way. It just isn't functioning, is it?
It isn't functioning, and we can see that everything from the fact that, bluntly, you've got no chance of being king, nor have I, and anybody who's watching who wants to be queen hasn't got a chance either. So the most significant head of state role is denied to democratic choice in this country. And it sets the tone for everything else, from an unelected House of Lords, a first past the post electoral system for the Commons, which doesn't really reflect the diversity of opinion in this country, doesn't allow in, therefore, people who actually think there might be radical alternatives. And I accept that would mean there would be some right-wingers in there who I really wouldn't like, but might also prevent us having this ghastly situation where, frankly, we end up with Truss representing the Tories and Keir Starmer representing Labour, where we all know that there are many people who are not happy with Keir Starmer's leadership of the Labour Party, whether they're in the Labour Party or not, who are actually saying, can we have a vision? Can we have an alternative? Can we actually see there's an other agenda, where we see the Greens underrepresented, the Liberal Democrats, God bless them, they've been around forever and they probably won't ever change anything, but nonetheless, they are clearly underrepresented. So we have a failing system of democracy. We have an unaccountable government. We have a system where we have prioritised privilege and wealth through the aristocracy and the monarchy, and at the same time we literally cannot find out what the government's up to and make them do what we need. And that whole system of failure is so toxic, we can't actually attract decent politicians into Parliament either. You know, people say to me, why don't you stand for Parliament? Why would I want to spend my life in Westminster around that toxic environment where I can't affect change? I can sit on the back benches and go, rah, 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 but do nothing else of any consequence without any prospect of having an impact upon the actual policies that are happening. I'm better off writing tweets, but they are a means of expressing the frustration. But what really gets me about the tweets that I'm writing, and I've written a lot and I'm unapologetic about it. I first wrote a really big Twitter thread on the coming energy crisis and how we needed to change pricing and everything in February, when I really began to pay some detailed attention to this. I mean, obviously, I've looked at the economics of this for a lot longer than that, but I did write a big thread then, which was quite heavily influenced by some work I've been doing with a guy based in Brussels, a chap called Mike Parr. And we looked at how to change the system. By the way, Truss has indicated she might actually listen to that one element of what I said, by the way. But Jack Monroe, many of you will be familiar with Jack Monroe and her great campaigning. Well, I've known Jack for quite a number of years. We've actually spent some time together, and I think she's a fantastic person. She gave it a push, and it gave me 100,000 Twitter followers. Well, last time I looked, which is half an hour or so ago, I've got 185,000 now. Now, why have I got 85,000 new Twitter followers, 10,000 odd a month this year? Because people are angry, and because they're hungry for knowledge, and they're hungry to know that there must be something better than this, because what we've got simply isn't working. And I think that's the critical thing. I'm now in discussion with some people that, that we need to actually really sit down and do some detailed work on what is the alternative. So many left-wing groups, so many campaigners, so many academics have spent years saying neoliberalism, the structure which underpins the Tory party, and frankly, a lot of Labour Party thinking right now, is out of date, doesn't work, malfunctions, doesn't deliver, can never deliver, etc., etc. And we, bluntly, we know it's true. We've got an energy crisis, we've got an inflation crisis, we've got oh, a house price crisis because vast numbers of people can never get near owning their own property ever. We've got a rental income crisis because people can't actually get hold of rental properties at a price they can afford anymore. We've got a food price crisis. We've got a climate crisis. Whatever you think of, we've got a crisis virtually. And supposedly we've got full employment, which is again a complete joke. Just ask young graduates whether they can get the type of job they want rather than just be a barista, and they'll tell you there's nothing actually out there for them to look at. So the idea of full employment in jobs that people don't want is, you know, the problem we've got. So there aren't even opportunities in this economy. What we need is to actually say, let's just accept that neoliberalism is dead. You know, what Karl Marx actually predicted, and I'm not really a Marxist, although of course I've read Marx. I reread the Communist Manifesto the last week because it's a flipping good thing to look at, to see, you know, how did he set out his agenda? And there's some quite good ideas in there, by the way. But I looked at that and said, you know, he was trying to affect social change, and he actually ended up with a really pragmatic system of reforms that we needed. And I'm discussing with others whether we should now just be saying, let's accept all this is rubbish. Let's look at what the alternatives are. Let's get on with planning the change. Let's present new manifestos. Let's stop agonizing over what's wrong with the system and whether we can tweak it. And let's talk about what can replace it, because literally, neoliberal capitalism is now eating itself. And I'll tell you why it's eating itself in a nutshell. Neoliberal capitalism relies on the wealthy extracting value from the rest of us, whether it be by rents, whether it be by interest, whether it be by profits, whether it be by exploitation, whether it be by monopoly, you name it, whatever it is, they extract value out of us as working people. And that has increased. And the time has come, the time has been reached where there frankly is no more value they can extract from us, because we've reached the point where we can't pay anymore and continue to live. That's where most people are. I've done the analysis. People on average income in this country cannot have average income. No, not people below average income. People on average income who are taking home $32,000 a year as a household on average can't afford to live and do the things that the average household used to think were important. They can't take the kids on holiday. They can't pay for the football tournaments they want to send their kids to. They can't pay for the extra lessons or the dancing or the swimming or the school trip or whatever else it is. Damn it, they're having a problem paying for school lunches. And I'd have free school dinners for everyone now, because I think that's one of the ways we have to tackle the impending crisis for childhood poverty, but only one of the many ways I deal with it. But they can't afford to live anymore. So neoliberal capitalism can't screw us any longer. It's reached the limit where it must implode because it's at the end of its road. We've got to talk about how we change that. Now, I haven't got all the answers yet, but I think there's a new agenda needed, and the time for that is now. And that's going to require quite a lot of people to put up quite a lot of sheets of blank paper. You know, I'm going to do this. I'll get arrested very soon for doing that, as we all know, because that's now an offence in society. I actually was on the BBC saying, we're recording this on Tuesday for, I know your broadcast tomorrow, but I was talking on the BBC this morning about why we need to end monarchy. I'm probably going to be arrested for that, the current rate of progress, but we have to be radical at the moment. We have to put forward new ideas. We have to talk about the change we want. And yeah, you're right, I'm angry, and that's why I'm spouting forth now almost without sort of limit. My wife will probably say, somebody's turned on my switch and I'll keep going forever because she thinks I do that. But yeah, why not? I'm angry.
No, but I mean, the thing is, just to sort of finish is you talk about the UN Declaration of Human Rights being eroded or taken away by people being arrested for shouting out during, say, Prince Charles's what it's called,
not my king.
You know, that's the other side of it. You're trying to say things are wrong, and yet people are also being told there's an authoritarianism going on to stop any dissent. So that's, I mean, why would you not be angry?
Well, I don't know. But I mean, I took part in the Nicky Campbell show on BBC Radio 5 Live this morning for an hour. And he let me start the hour and he let me end the hour, but we had some real rubbish in between. But I mean, I pointed out, the monarchy is wonderful, all these people were saying. I said, look, just suppose Prince Andrew had inherited the crown instead of Prince Charles. Now, you can put up with Prince Charles, apparently, because, you know, until recently, the Daily Mail hated him, but now they love him. But Prince Andrew, even the Queen couldn't stand the idea of Prince Andrew being with a royal title, and he was number 2 son. So this is a system that's bound to go wrong at some point. It's not democratic, it's not fair, and yet the power of the state is being used to arbitrarily close down anybody who wants to say in public, "Not my king." And I'll be honest with you, my wife and I thought about going to the declaration of the new King's ascent near us at the weekend, and just sort of being, "Not in our name" or something, put up a banner just very quietly, and we just suddenly realized we'd probably been arrested for that. We didn't go. We decided just to give it a miss, because why did we want to endorse, you know, his ascension by adding to the numbers there? But that's the sort of thing that is now so frightening, for doing something as simple as saying, "I didn't choose this king." You can be arrested. That's wrong. This is an affront to our freedom, and freedom should be at the core of our thinking if we really care about a genuine, fair society in which everyone can survive, prosper, and get on.
Well, look, I appreciate you spending any time with me, considering you've been on the BBC and all these other fancy channels.
There are others.
but I have to say, it's inspiring what you're doing. It's good that people are speaking out, and I just hope your heart can keep going and pumping at the right intervals, and so that we can continue to hear you longer, because we'll need you. We're going to need you.
Well, I'll keep going as long as I can, and I think I'm in pretty good fit form. I'm just over long COVID, thank God. I've had a ghastly summer, but I'm now over it, so I'll keep fighting.